Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight's story begins on a quiet rainy evening in a city where millions of lights shine but many hearts still feel alone. This is the story of a dying billionaire heiress, a wrong phone call, and a single dad who never expected his life to change forever. The rain tapped softly against the windows of a massive glass mansion sitting high above the city. Inside that mansion lived Alina Valmont, the only daughter of a powerful billionaire family. The world knew her name, her wealth, her beauty, and the empire she had inherited. What the world didn't know was that Alina was dying. For months she had been battling a rare illness. The best doctors had flown in from around the world. The most advanced treatments money could buy had been tried. Nothing worked. The once lively heiress who used to dominate magazine covers now spent most of her time alone in a dimly lit bedroom overlooking the skyline. Machines hummed quietly beside her bed. Her breathing was slow, weak, lonely. That night, the silence inside the mansion felt heavier than usual. The nurses had stepped out. The staff whispered in distant hallways. Even the city lights outside seemed blurred by the rain. Alina picked up her phone with trembling fingers. She didn't know why she dialed a number. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she didn't want to be alone anymore. Maybe she just wanted someone, anyone to stay. The call rang, on the other side of the city, inside a tiny apartment above a laundromat. A tired single dad named Daniel was helping his little daughter finish her homework at the kitchen table. Daniel wasn't rich. He worked 2 jobs. During the day, he fixed equipment at a hospital maintenance department. At night, he drove for deliveries. His daughter Lily was the center of his entire world. Their apartment was small, their furniture mismatched, but laughter filled the space. Suddenly, Daniel's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Hello. For a few seconds there was only soft breathing. Then a weak voice spoke. Stay with me tonight. Daniel frowned slightly. I think you may have the wrong number. The voice didn't respond immediately. Instead, it whispered again. Please, don't hang up. Daniel looked at his daughter who was coloring quietly. Something in the woman's voice sounded different, fragile, like someone standing at the edge of something final. Are you okay? He asked gently. On the other side of the phone, Alina closed her eyes. No one had asked her that in weeks. Not the doctors. Not the lawyers discussing her inheritance. Not the board members waiting for her position. Just a stranger. I'm scared, she admitted softly. Daniel didn't know who she was. He didn't know where she was. But something inside him refused to hang up. So he stayed. Minutes passed. Then an hour. They talked about random things. Simple things. Favorite foods. Childhood memories. The sound of rain. For the first time in months, Alina laughed. A real laugh. Weak but real. Lily eventually fell asleep on the couch beside Daniel. And still he stayed on the phone. After a while, Alina asked quietly, do you believe strangers meet for a reason? Daniel smiled a little. Sometimes, yeah. There was a pause. Then she said something that surprised him. Would you come here? Daniel blinked. Come where? She slowly told him the address. When he heard it, he nearly dropped the phone. It was one of the most expensive private estates in the entire city. Wait, that place belongs to the Valmont family. I know. Daniel sat silently. Who are you? There was a long pause. Then she said, I'm the girl who called the wrong number. Daniel didn't know why, but something told him she was telling the truth in a strange way. He looked at his sleeping daughter, looked at the rain outside, looked back at the phone. You want me to come right now? Yes. Why? Her voice cracked. Because I don't want to die alone tonight. Those words hit harder than he expected. Daniel had seen illness before. He worked at a hospital long enough to understand what that sentence meant. He quietly carried Lily to her small bed, left a note for his neighbor who sometimes watched her, put on his jacket, and walked out into the rain. 40 minutes later, he stood outside towering gates, guarded by security cameras and armed guards. The guard stared at him suspiciously. Can I help you? Daniel awkwardly held up his phone. Someone inside asked me to come. The guards were ready to send him away, until one of them received a call through his earpiece. His expression suddenly changed. The gate slowly opened. Daniel stepped inside. The driveway alone looked longer than his entire street. The mansion lights glowed like something out of a movie. Inside, staff members rushed around whispering. But when he gave the name Alina had told him, everything stopped. A nurse led him upstairs quietly. The hallway smelled like medicine, an expensive perfume. When the door opened, Daniel saw her. The powerful billionaire heiress the world admired looked nothing like the headlines. She looked small, fragile, human. Alina smiled faintly when she saw him. You came? Daniel rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. You sounded like you needed someone. The nurse left the room silently. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the quiet rhythm of the heart monitor. Daniel pulled a chair closer to the bed. So, you call strangers often? She smiled weakly. First time, lucky me. That made her laugh again. They talked for hours. About life. About fear, about regrets. Daniel told her stories about raising Lily alone after his wife passed away years earlier. Alina listened like those stories were priceless treasures. No one had spoken to her normally in a long time. Everyone else treated her like a business contract waiting to expire. But Daniel talked to her like she was just Alina. At one point she looked at him and asked, "Are you afraid of dying?" Daniel thought about it. "Not really. Why?" "Because what scares me more is leaving my daughter alone." Alina stared at him quietly, then whispered, "That's how I feel tonight." Hours passed. The rain stopped. The sky slowly turned pale blue with morning light. Doctors quietly checked her vitals. They seemed surprised. Her condition had stabilized. One of the nurses later whispered to another doctor, "She hasn't talked this much in weeks." By morning, Daniel stood up. "I should go check on my daughter." Alina suddenly looked worried. "Will you come back?" Daniel hesitated. This world wasn't his world, but he nodded anyway. "Yeah, I will," and he did. The next day, and the day after, weeks passed. Something strange started happening. Elena's health slightly improved. Not a miracle, but enough that doctors were confused. She laughed more, ate more, slept peacefully, and every evening the single dad with worn shoes walked through the gates like he belonged there. The staff started smiling when he arrived. Even the strict head doctor admitted privately, "Whatever he's doing, keep letting him in." One evening, Alina looked out the window and said quietly, "Do you know something funny?" "What?" "I spent my whole life surrounded by powerful people, but the person who saved me dialed in by accident." Daniel chuckled. "Pretty weird story." "No," she said softly. "Pretty beautiful story." Months later, the city tabloids exploded with rumors. The mysterious man visiting the Valmont estate, the heiress who was supposed to be dying, now attending short public appearances, again. Reporters tried to find out who he was, but Daniel never cared about cameras. He only cared about going home to his daughter after visiting his friend. One afternoon, Lily finally asked him, "Dad, who is the princess lady you visit?" Daniel laughed. "She's not a princess." Lily crossed her arms. "You visit a giant castle. That's a princess." When Alina finally met Lily, something in her eyes softened in a way the staff had never seen. The quiet mansion suddenly had the sound of a child running through hallways. And for the first time in years, it felt like a home instead of a museum. Months later, doctors gathered for a meeting that shocked everyone. Her illness had stopped progressing. No one could explain it clearly. Treatment was finally starting to work. But one doctor said something interesting. Patients with strong emotional will sometimes fight harder than medicine expects. That night, Alina looked at Daniel and said, "Remember the night I called you?" "Yeah. I thought that was my last night alive." Daniel smiled slightly. "Good thing you dialed the wrong number." She shook her head. "No." Her voice softened. "I think I dialed the right one." Outside the mansion windows, the city lights flickered like distant stars. Life was still unpredictable. Nothing was guaranteed. But something had changed. A dying billionaire heiress had found hope. A struggling single dad had found a new chapter he never imagined. And all because of one quiet moment, one wrong number, and one simple request. Stay with me tonight. Sometimes the smallest decisions change everything. Sometimes strangers become family. And sometimes the person who saves your life is the one who simply chooses to stay